Welcome to week 11. Time is really flying fast, isn't it? This week's topic is multicultural Korea. It's sort of an extension from what we talked about last week, aging, because partly Korea is becoming multicultural or will become more multicultural because of aging. But anyway, it's a phenomenon that is quite new to Korea because Korea had been traditionally ethnically homogeneous population, or should we say, Korea used to be comprised of ethnically homogeneous population, but that's changing and fast, right? So if you look at the lecture outline, so this is what's in store for us. The title or the subheadings rather long, but I'll start with an introduction, which is a controversy over building a mosque in Daegu, and that'll be followed by certain facts regarding multicultural Korea, and that will be followed by a discussion on theories of global migration. And maybe you're thinking, what has global migration got to do with multicultural Korea? But how does a society become multicultural? It becomes multicultural because people move from country to country, okay? So this is something that is not readily recognized by casual observers, okay? So a key to the making of a multicultural society anywhere, it's due to global migration, okay? So we'll look at these theories, okay? And then I talk about three phenomena that are making Korea multicultural. First, it's the influx of migrant workers. Second, migrant brides. And third, the rise in the number of multicultural children. Multicultural children meaning biracial or bi-ethnic children. Okay? And lastly, I talk about the implications of the Korean case for the debate in ethnic diversity, racism, multiculturalism, and so on. Okay? So that's what's in store for you today and Wednesday. All right, introduction. Just a sort of a newspaper story that I'm sharing with you. All right, a conflict is deepening over the construction of a two-story mosque in a residential district of Daegu, which is the nation's third largest city located in the southeastern region of the country. So you know that there is a mosque in Itaewon, right, in Seoul, but from what I know, outside of Seoul, there is no other mosque, although the Muslim population in Korea has been growing, especially because of many migrant workers from Islamic countries, okay, including Pakistan, right? The construction of the mosque was launched in December 2020 by the local Islamic community after the latter received a construction permit from the local district office. Okay? So this is a fact. But some residents worried that the mosque would lead to stronger Islamic influence in the area have been strongly opposing the construction. They staged rallies in front of the construction site and filed multiple petitions with the district office calling for a halt to the construction, citing loud noise and infringement of property rights. Under the pressure, the district authorities ordered the building owner to halt the construction in February 2021. And it has been delayed indefinitely ever since. So again, the owner of the building site got a permit back in 2020, but since February 2021, the construction has been halted, and that's the way things are today still. Okay, and if you want to see how far these residents went, here is another thing to share with you. The residents who opposed the construction of the mosque also filed a petition on the Cheongwade website urging the government to save the country from Islamic influence. For those of you who are not familiar, Cheongwade is the Korean presidential palace where the president used to live. The current president has relocated his, it's like a blue house of Korea, okay? And what Koreans can do, when you want to file a petition, you write up why you're filing this petition, and the rule is that if your petition is agreed upon by more than 150,000 Koreans, then Cheongwade looks into the issue. Okay, so that's the deal. So this is where Koreans could sort of voice their concern or complaints about government administration and so on, right? So this is what the residents did to file a petition on the Cheongwade website. And the petition read, and I hope you don't laugh, but this is the exact wording, okay? Quote, "I've been fighting for over 8 months to stop the construction of the mosque. I've seen many foreign residents in this area while living here for decades. But I've never seen foreigners form a community of their own like they do. I sometimes feel threatened seeing them walking in groups on the street. Now that they've been buying houses in the area, it's a matter of time until our district becomes Muslim." The writer demanded the government step in, saying the government should help us build a safer country for our children. So you can see how racist these people are. And this is sort of being said in the open. It's not something they sort of secretly share with like-minded people. It's when they file a petition on Cheongwade website, it's there for everyone to see. So this is not something you could sort of, again, it's not something that is kept hidden from public eye, okay? So, and that's the way it was. But there are those who are, of course, have different voices too, right? So the Islamic community in Korea and civic groups claim that freedom of religion should be guaranteed. They view the district office's administrative order to suspend the construction as being discriminatory, rightly speaking. A member of a civic group said, to quote, "Opponents are discriminating against them based on nationality, race, and religion. And the local authority should retract its discriminatory administrative order, which was made only based on opinions among residents with anti-Muslim sentiment." So you can see how there are two views on the whole situation. And of course, the side that is demanding the suspension of construction, clearly racist. And anyway, I have some visual images to show you the length to which these racists have raised their own issue. Okay. So this is the actual site where you see the frames, but the construction halted. And these residents with banners that says we're dead against the construction of a mosque. And you see the pig's head put there in front of the houses of those who are opposed to the construction, and having a pork barbecue, okay, near the site of the construction. But that's not all. We have a rally which happened this year. So you can see actually some monks who are in support of the construction of the mosque in that particular place. Okay. Anyway, while the growing tension of the construction of a mosque in Daegu can be said to be an isolated incident, it is symptomatic of the growing importance of the issue of multiculturalism, as Korea is reportedly the most rapidly ethnically diversifying country in the world. Again, it may be misleading to, you can say, how is this possible? But it is true because Korea had been a ethnically homogeneous country, right? So adding even a small number of foreigners appears as a big sort of impact, okay? Because again, Korea had been a ethnically homogeneous country not from time immemorial, but for a long time. Anyway, the question is, how multicultural is Korea? How is international migration related to increasing ethnic diversity of many societies, including Korea, of course? What are the factors which account for the making of multicultural reality in Korea? And lastly, what are the implications of multicultural Korea for the debates in multiculturalism? Okay, so anyway, before I move on, any comments on this little story about the controversy over mosque construction in Daegu? Any thoughts? Any comments? Any questions? Or is there something similar happening in your country as well? Okay. All right. The making of a multicultural Korea, facts. So I think I made this point several times already. Again, Korea is considered perhaps the most ethnically homogeneous society. Well, let's check this out. Do you know of any other country where the population comprises of more than 90% one group? I can name one country, but let me hear you first. Somalia. Wow. Is that really? Wow. That's a very amazing fact. Because I somehow have this stereotypical view that, most African countries are very multi-ethnic, right? But you're telling me Somalia is an exception. Wow. Okay, Somalia. What else? It's a country you're very familiar with. A country with more than 90% one ethnic group. Yes. So now I know 3 countries: Somalia, Japan, and Korea. Any other country you know? Australia. That's a unique sort of situation. So can all the Caucasians be considered the same ethnic group? Oh? North Korea. Sorry, I thought you mentioned Australia. Yes, North Korea, it would be a good one too. Okay? It'll be more ethnically homogeneous than Korea for sure. All right, so, so from this short survey, you understand how out of some 200 countries in the world, very few countries are ethnically homogeneous. Okay, so anyway, so this is sort of a basic fact we need to sort of know before we actually talk about multicultural Korea. So the percentage of foreign nationals has been growing rapidly since the late 1990s in Korea. So look at these numbers. It's simply amazing. In 1990, there were only about 100,000 foreign residents, and that accounted for 0.23%. So that's not even 1/4 of 1%, okay, of the total population. But in 2009, we finally reached the number of foreign residents finally reached the 1 million mark. Okay, but that only still accounted for like 2% of the total population. But still, that's a jump of like 10 times or tenfold increase from 1990, right? So when we say that Korea is the most rapidly ethnically diversifying country in the world, this is the kind of a data that we look at. Okay? Again, in just 20 years, the proportion of foreigners jumped almost 10 times. Okay? Not almost, but more than 10 times. And in 2018, the number reached the 2 million mark, which represents about 4% of the total population. Okay? So if you want to compare the number of foreigners in 2018 with the number of foreigners in 1990, we're talking about how many? So 20-fold increase in just 30 years, right? In 2019, the number of foreign residents reached 2.5 million, representing about 5% of the total population, both of which are the highest on record. Okay? But something happened in 2020 and 2021 because of the COVID pandemic. The number of foreigners actually fell below the 2 million mark. Okay? And the proportion also fell accordingly. But forecasts are that we will be bringing in more migrant workers and migrant brides in the near future and beyond because of the dire population decline we're facing. Okay? Remember how I told you that Korean population has been declining since 2020. Okay? Or is it 2021? Anyway, and it's not likely, the trend will not likely reverse anytime soon. Okay? Still, the rate of increase in ethnic diversity in Korea is currently the highest in the world, again, particularly due to the fact that the country had been ethnically homogeneous. So all the numbers that I share with you in graph, this is what it looks like. Okay, so this one should say 2021. So it fell, but that says I think 2030 or so. That's the projection. Okay. And where are they from? I think if you're interested in things Korean, that should have been your next question. So you can see the largest proportion or the number is Korean Chinese, okay? Followed by Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, Americans. So there are 140,000 Americans in Korea. Many of them professionals, like teachers and so on, right? Now, if you are keen on sort of this kind of data, Well, let me ask you, when you look at this, is there anything that comes across to you as being striking? Well, that's odd, or wow, that's interesting. Anything? Yes. Okay, that's a good observation. That's true. What else? Yes. Oh, you expect to see more Japanese. Okay. So I gotta check this because the number tends to be too small. You know? Yes. Okay. That's a good one. You notice that there's North Korea? Because when we do this calculation, they are included. Why? We do the number of foreigners based on the passports they hold or their citizenship. Okay? They come to Korea as defectors, right? So that's one of the unique things about Korea. They're having these so many defectors. Anything else? Last call. Okay. Thanks for all the comments. But this was what I was getting at. This says number of foreigners by their countries of origin, and these numbers are about how Korea is multicultural, right? How Korea is rapidly transforming itself as a ethnically diverse society. But the largest number happens to be Koreans. You see that? They may have Chinese passport, but they are ethnically Koreans. But they are classified as foreigners, and you take 600,000 away from the total of like 1.8 million, then we're talking about the number of foreigners in Korea dropping, right? Propitiously. So when you hear someone saying, oh, Korea is a multicultural society, you should always have this footnote thought that at least like a 1/3 of these so-called foreigners are actually ethnically Koreans, okay? And also the number for North Korea, same thing. They're ethnically Koreans, okay? The Korean case affirms the universalization and acceleration of international migration, as practically every society is affected by it, and as the number of cross-border migrants continues to increase. I think I've been very modest here. I shouldn't say as practically every society, because practically should be dropped, right? Is there any society you know where there is no migrant? So there you go. As every society is affected by international migration. Okay? More importantly, the Korean case reveals something not readily recognized by casual observers, and I'm repeating myself, that international migration of people as either migrant workers and migrant brides is a key factor for the making of an ethnically diverse society. I think this is a very, very important point, okay? And I'm proud to say you don't get to hear this from too many places, okay? Because it's a revelation, okay? If you don't think about it, I don't think you'll be able to arrive at this kind of an idea that freely, okay? I think that's how much I'm emphasizing this point, okay? Like trade, migration has increased significantly in recent decades. In fact, the movement of capital, technology, and products across national boundaries is inseparable from the migration of people. A report by the UN shows that the number of people who live and or work outside their countries of birth has more than doubled over the past 40 years to 281 million in 2021. Okay? And the total is about 3.6% of the world's population, or 1 in every 28 persons. Okay? So global migration is, so if you want to write a paper on, let's say, something about globalization, I think underexplored topic is globalization of migration. Okay? Yes, our ancestors have moved or relocated to find food or whatever, but it's happening at a much greater rate in modern times. Okay? Accordingly, 5 general trends of international migration can be observed as follows. You can easily see that a question from this particular list could easily be on the final exam, right? So 5 general trends of international migration are as follows. First, obvious, right? The globalization of migration. So it simply says that, you know, every society is either is affected as either migrant sending country or migrant receiving country, right? Second is the acceleration of migration. This simply means that more people migrate than ever before. It's increasing, right? When you talk about migrants, don't just limit yourself to like thinking about migrant workers, migrant brides, because migration also includes students, refugees, asylum seekers, right? So if you include all those, you can see how the number of migrants all over the world continuously increasing all over the world. Okay? Third is differentiation of migration. And I already sort of mentioned in passing. Before, migration was largely limited to migration of workers. Okay? And to a lesser extent, brides. But now you have labor migration, bride migration, student migration, family reunion, refugees, asylum seekers, and so on. Am I missing anything on the list? When you think about sort of global migration, is there any type that's also worth mentioning? Anyone? No? Okay. Fourth, the feminization of migration. Women are playing a greater role in most types of migration, particularly in labor migration. So again, before, you know, more migrants happen to be males, okay? Far more, I should say. But now you have almost a parity, okay? And the fifth, the growing politicization of migration. Because so many people from so many countries are involved in migration, it's an important diplomatic issue. It's an important political issues, you know, for example, the issues of visa, right? That's a classic example of how migration is politicized, okay? It's just not a matter of a personal wish or companies making final decisions, but it's the government that has the final say, right? So those are the 5 general trends of global migration. However, the percentage of migrants in the total population varies greatly from country to country, as you may know. And international migrants comprise at least 20% of the population in 41 countries. So these are the list is the top 15 countries with the most immigrants in millions. So on the far right, it's the percentage, and this is the number. Okay, so the United States has the largest number of immigrants, meaning people not born in the USA. Okay, it's 48 million, accounting for about 15% of the total population. And let's see when this was from. Anyway, it's in 2018, 2019 or so. And so one noteworthy country would be this. Although the number of foreigners living in United Arab Emirates is only 8 million, they account for 87% of the total population. And but the difference between US and UAE is that where in the USA, even if you're there as a migrant worker, you have a chance to stay as permanent resident. Okay? But in the UAE, for example, they don't have that right. They have to leave once the contract is over. And that's the same in Korea. Okay, we have so many of these migrant workers, but they are not entitled to any permanent residency. Okay, so we have what is called closed immigration policy. Okay, we don't allow, let's say, migrant workers to stay in Korea as permanent residents. The only type of people who we allow to do that are migrant brides. Okay. And also investors. And I thought I throw this in because it's an interesting set of data to know. So which countries host and send the most migrants? And this is from 2015. Well, this was obvious, right? The US as the host country, the largest number. And many of them are developed countries, right? And the top 10 migrant sending countries, India number 1, Mexico number 2, Russia number 3, China number 4, and okay. Now, just for fun, okay, which continent was the destination for the largest number of international migrants in 2017? So this may vary from year to year, but I think this data from 2017 also would give you an idea as to, well, it'll break your stereotypical belief, okay? So the continents I mean by these: Asia, Europe, North America, Africa, Latin America, and Oceania. Europe. See, answer is not that simple. So it's not Europe. Anyone else? Again, you have to look closely at the question, right? Which continent was the destination for the largest number? Okay? I mean, Europe may be the place they want to go, but they largely have also immigration policy being rather closed, right? So anyway, well, if I have this on the final exam, it'll be a giveaway question, right? And the number one is, you know the answer now, right? It's Asia. Yeah? So, because, you know, there are so many migrant workers and migrant brides coming to Korea, going to Japan, going to Taiwan, Singapore, and also Middle East. As you know, Middle East is included under Asia, right? So you can see, but back in 2000, yes, it was Europe. That was the #1 destination. And it'll be interesting to learn what the situation is now, right? Another trend to take notice is a migration pattern between the North and the South. You know what the North and South divide is? In case you don't know, here it is. The North is synonymous with economically developed nations of the world, including the West, Japan, Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan. So the North include not only the West, you know, including like New Zealand and Australia, but also these economically developed countries. And the South represents developing countries, most of which are found in South America, Africa, and South Asia. So the question is, here are the pictorial or the map. So you can see how these countries are considered the South. Okay, so most all of Latin America, almost all of, I would say all of Africa, and most of Southeast Asia, if not all. So except there's one exception, right? Australia and New Zealand there. Now, you see the difference between North and South. And the question is, in terms of international migrants, countries of origin and destination, which type was most popular in 2017? So, meaning, north to north, north to south, south to south, south to north. Since you don't know the answer, just take a pick. Yes, your name is? You, yeah. Siam? Take a guess. South to north. And the answer is south to south. So that's another surprise, right? I think, but back in 2010, south to north was the most popular type. Okay, so these data sort of give you sort of different ideas than what you would expect, right? So. Siam, thanks for your participation. All right. Now, so I hope you have this understanding that migration or global migration is a key factor that contributes to the making of a multicultural society, right? So that's why we have to understand why people migrate. Okay? Why do people migrate? All right. So I've already mentioned the question, and as you'd agree, migration is as old as human societies and is an integral component of human behavior. From antiquity, our ancestors migrated to different locations for various reasons, like out of curiosity, out of sense of adventure, to find food, to search for better grazing and agricultural lands, to escape natural disasters, to seek protection from adversaries, to conquer land for new settlements, and to obtain religious, political, and social freedoms. And I'm sure if you're to find historical examples where our ancestors did this, I'm sure you'll be able to find examples from different countries, right? Do you know of any example where people migrated to obtain religious freedom? Yes. Hmm? So which country are you talking about? Soviet? Mm. Okay. Do you remember any example from the US? Well, if I'm not mistaken, Puritans from England, they were sort of discriminated in the UK, so they migrated to the US or America, right? So again, if you want to look up some examples of these, again, the internet would be a good source. A variety of theories. Now, again, these are the obvious reasons that prompted our ancestors to, relocate or migrate, right? But I'm looking for reasons that explain why people still migrate today. Okay? So the theories that I'm explaining to you are theories advanced to explain why people in modern times, why people today still migrate to different countries. Okay? So this is about country to country or cross-border migration. Number one, you may not be so hospitable to these kind of terminologies, but anyway, it's called neoclassical economics. It's better known as, anyway, yeah, let me just jump to the better known term. Are you familiar with push-pull theory? Hmm? See, push-pull theory in any circumstance, push is a negative factor. Pull, positive, attractive factor. So the neoclassical economics theories of migration is the same as the push-pull theory. Okay? So the argument here goes like this. International migration is a consequence of differentials in living conditions, wages, and employment conditions among migrant sending and migrant receiving countries. So what would be the push factors of developing countries economically? Can anyone think about that? Again, what are the push factors that are driving many people in developing countries to migrate? Yes. Civil unrest. Also, lack of economic opportunities, low wages, right? And you can think of, for example, all these. See, push factors, again, are reasons why people want to, sort of factors that push them away. Okay? And pull factors, factors that pull them in. So you can see how the push factors in the developing economies, key reason, right? Low living standard, low wages, few job opportunities. Just sticking with economic factors, pull factors of developed countries, high living standards, higher wages, more job opportunities, and also more welfare services too, right? So I think you could easily include that there, okay? Hmm. All right. So that's neoclassical economics theory of migration, known as push-pull theory. Okay? So you can see how this would be like a very important theory, right? Explaining why people migrate. People migrate because of the low living standard, few economic opportunities, maybe even social unrest in their own country. So they seek better living conditions, higher living standard, more job opportunities at developed countries. Okay? So very important theory, right? Second theory is the new economics of migration. And this one simply says that migration is a household decision, not one making a choice for him or herself. Okay? Like, for example, if you are a exchange student, when you decided to come to KU to have your foreign exchange student experience, you made the final decision, right? Not your family, right? But with the new economics of migration, it's a household decision where a person in the family is sent overseas to work, and he or she sends money back home, okay, for the financial welfare of the family he or she belongs to, okay? Now, the third theory is a very, very important theory as to why people migrate. And it goes like this. Migration is a means of mobilizing cheap workforce for capital under the capitalist system. And I'll bet you any money, this is the first time you're hearing about this, okay? People migrate because of the capitalist system. Why? Capitalism is in the business of making profit, and what does it want to do? It wants to create more profit by utilizing cheap labor force. And where are the cheap labor force found? Take the example of the USA. When was the first time that they brought in cheap labor from outside? Or anyone from France? Who are the largest ethnic group other than French people? Algerians. Why were they brought in? Was it because French people felt sorry that they colonized Algeria? No, the answer lies in this. They wanted to make use of cheap labor. Okay? What about all those Indians living in the UK? India used to be a what of the UK? Colony, right? And there are also many Africans living in the UK because they come from former colonies. And they're there because the former colonizers wanted to utilize their cheap labor. Okay? Now, the worst form of using cheap labor is slavery, right? So, the way millions of African Americans happen to be living in the USA is a result of this historical structural approach. Okay? Capitalism wanting to utilize cheap labor. Okay? What about the first Chinese who happened to be settling in the USA? They were brought in to work on railroads. right? At a very cheap labor cost, okay? And what about Korea now? Why do we have so many migrant workers? Because firms want to make use of cheap labor. So again, when I first read about this is about like 10 years ago, I was just blown away. Because I never thought of linking capitalist system with using cheap labor, right? And I hope you're also as blown away as I was when I first read about this. Okay? Any thoughts on this? Can you think of any other examples in history where mass migration took place because the purpose was to utilize cheap labor? Okay, moving on. Fourth is also very important theory. It's a dual labor market theory. Yeah, so the persistent need for foreign laborers in developed countries stems from the fact that the better educated, wealthier, and status-conscious individuals in these countries shun away from certain jobs that are relatively low-paying and less prestigious. Can you think of any examples where this happened? Yes? Plumbing. Are you talking about the USA? Okay, so that's a good example where so-called dirty jobs, okay, although paying well, if a country reaches a certain stage of development, you have these young people who are better educated, wealthier, do shun away from certain jobs. Okay, this happened in Germany, for example, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, when they could not find enough Germans to work in mines. Also, they could not have enough German people working as nurses. It's different now, right? Because nurses are more highly paid, and there's definitely a much greater appreciation for the work they do. But back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, it wasn't so in Germany. So they were suffering from a very serious shortage of nurses and miners because of this. And this is when many Filipino, miners, they were not miners before going to Germany, because many had, university degrees, but they just wanted to live better, have a better life in Germany. So tens of thousands of Filipinos, over 20,000 Koreans went to Germany to work as miners and nurses. Okay, so that's again, they went because the people of the host society were experiencing this. Okay, so and I'm sure you could find other examples in other countries, maybe in your own country case as well, right? Fifth theory that explains migration, and this one has to do with marriage migration. Okay? The concept of hypergamy refers to the act or practice of a person marrying a spouse of higher caste or social status than themselves. It's colloquially referred to as marrying up. Okay? So in the caste system of India, there are subcastes within a caste, and women in particular are expected to marry higher ranked men than their own. Okay? So this is, again, this practice is called hypergamy. This is from anthropology. And this is also used to explain how women from developing countries married men from developed countries to sort of marry up. Okay? So I'll be turning to this issue a little bit later, not maybe today, but on Wednesday. We see a lot of Korean men marrying women from other parts of Asia, usually from less developed countries. And for these women, it's a hypergamy, right? Because they're improving their status by marrying these Korean men. Okay, so again, marrying up. And there's another term. The opposite term is hypogamy. That is marrying down. Okay, so marrying someone of lower status than yourself is considered hypogamy. Okay. So the question is, what are the factors facilitating the increasing ethnic diversity in Korea? Excuse me. There are two factors. Actually, there are three factors, right? I'll fix this. Influx of migrant workers, influx of migrant brides, and although it's not on the list, it's the rise in the number of multicultural children. Okay, again, biracial and bi-ethnic children. Okay, so the three factors are making Korea sort of a multicultural society. Okay. And now I turn to the fourth section, and it's multicultural reality in Korea. One, continuing influx of migrant workers. And I will close today's lecture with just a short description of how Korea was for a long time, a migrant sending country. Okay? Although now it's a migrant receiving country, but it used to be a migrant sending country. And it goes like this. So before talking about the influx of foreigners to Korea, it would be pertinent to discuss the fact that Korea had actually been a migrant sending country from the mid-19th century until recently. Okay? And here it goes. So the first recorded case of large number of Koreans migrating took place from the mid-19th century and on, to China, especially Manchuria, and to southeastern Russia. And why did they go? Great Famine of 1869. And this was when many people were starving to death. And so this is when I would say hundreds of thousands of Koreans migrated to, again, Manchuria and to southeastern Russia. So that's why in Russia, there used to be many Koreans, although they were forcibly relocated to, sort of areas far from Moscow, in countries like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So they used to be their descendants of the original migrants to southeastern Russia. Second sort of important case of Korean migration, it is to the USA. Okay, first in 1902, which was brokered by, naturally, by missionaries. Okay, and to Mexico in 1905, and to Cuba in 1920. So there are a small number of Korean descendants still living in Mexico and also Cuba. Many of whom have intermarried with local Mexicans and Cubans. They went to work as laborers at sugarcane plants and so on. This is Korean farmers. Koreans' outbound migration continued, and this would be the historical incident during which the largest number of Koreans migrated, although many of them returned, happened during the Japanese colonial period. Okay? This is when up to 1/6 of the population, or 4 million Koreans, were living abroad as forced laborers. Okay? And this includes up to 200,000 women who were taken overseas as comfort women, right? Also to Germany, this already I mentioned, right? 1960s and 1970s is when Korea was still a developing poor country, and 20,000 Koreans went to Germany to work as miners. So again, many men who were recruited had at least high school diploma, and some even college degrees. And nurses, of course, they had nurse licenses, right? And many of them did not return. They stayed they're still living in Germany. Okay. And last example of Koreans sort of going overseas to settle. This refers to immigration to countries like the USA. This happened from the mid-1960s, but since then, the destination countries diversified, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and some countries in Europe. Okay. Also, when there was the construction boom in the Middle East, from the 1970s to early 1980s, many Korean men went there to work. Okay. The construction boom in the Middle East is a current phenomenon. It's still continuing, but Koreans are no longer there because their labor costs are too expensive. Okay, so the jobs that Korean workers used to do, they have been taken over by workers from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so on, countries that are still developing. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. Okay, so just maybe last slide. So because of all the migrations that we have experienced, you can see how Korea has a large diaspora. Okay, and this I think I already showed you this before, right? The biggest, the country with the largest population of Koreans outside Korea is the USA. With the number one country used to be China for the longest time, but many Korean Chinese have migrated back to Korea. That's why the number declined over the years, whereas the number in the USA continuously increased. Okay, number one, number two, Japan is number three, Canada number four, as far as the top countries with the largest Korean diasporas. Okay. With 7.4 Koreans living overseas, Korean diaspora is the 8th largest in the world. And yes, this is really the last slide. Okay, so you can see India has the world's largest diaspora, followed by Mexico, China, Russia, Korea, number 8th. Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop here and see you back here on Wednesday. Thank you.